I thought I'd go live today and check in with everybody to see how you're all doing, what's going on in your life, but also to take any questions you might have about narcissistic abuse. I'm going exclusively live here on YouTube, so anybody who joins me, you have my full attention, which is rare. I know I don't often do that. But today I thought I miss you. I wasn't live on Tuesday, and we didn't get a chance to touch bases. Sorry, I'm moving my computer so I can talk to you, so I can type, so I can actually chat with you today. So, how are you doing? How is your recovery going? What's new in the world of narcissistic abuse? It was interesting. I was out of town last weekend. I went to a faith based conference where a lot of traumatized survivors end up because experiencing abuse has a profound effect on our spirituality. It certainly has had a very profound effect on my spirituality. As I look back, here's the shocking things about abuse is that when you get out of a toxic relationship and you look back at your life, you realize that maybe that wasn't your only relationship, that there's been other types of times in which you've experienced trauma or you have been negated, invalidated, minimized, that the abuse isn't necessarily limited to this one relationship, but it may have been something that you experienced on an ongoing basis. And certainly was true for me, that when I got done with that relationship with a narcissistic sociopath, that I realized I had had a history of relationships that were toxic, that was not the exclusive relationship. And I also unfortunately realized that my experience in the church had been toxic, and that had had a profound effect on me and has really made me feel distrusting, wary of leadership. I think that's the biggest impact. It's made me very, very leery of people, of high control situations. I just don't find them feeling very safe. And so as a result, I've distanced myself from the church, not distanced myself from God, but have been really careful about my engagement and involvement in church. So this last weekend, I went to Minneapolis in an effort to reclaim that. I went to what's called Evolving Faith Community conference, and it was a day and a half. It was really amazing, incredible speakers, and I had a great time. But that was my way of taking that back, because that I had history in that city, that I had experienced abuse in that city. So I went in knowing that it was possibly a site of triggers for me, and I had a game plan. And one of them was that I was going to reach out and contact people. Um, I actually got a hold of another person, a content creator that I know who lives there, that I had met before, and her and I have a really nice relationship, and we went out for dinner. The other thing that I did, and I know that I share this a lot, is that one of the first things I did for my own recovery is that I jumped into group coaching for a year. And this coaching opportunity was actually an hour and a half twice a week. So 3 hours of group coaching for a full year. And that coach lived in the city. So I made sure that we had a late lunch together and got to meet up. It was my second time meeting her in person, and it was so powerful to make this connection to my past, the healing part of my past, in a city that had had a lot of triggers and a lot of painful memories. So that was a way that I was reclaiming this experience, this opportunity back for myself and making it something new. At the end of the conference, I knew that I had an evening, and rather than going back to my room, which I can be an introvert and just sort of like hang by myself, but instead I decided to reach out and do something. So I invited myself in with a group, and that was very inclusive and inviting. And we actually went out to have a dinner at Hell's Kitchen, and I had an amazing evening, a wonderful way to kind of cap off the weekend. So that's what I did to heal around a potentially uncomfortable, anxiety producing, a place that sets off my fight or flight triggers. That's what I did to reclaim it. So, what are you doing to reclaim your triggers? How are you taking back the areas of your life that have felt tainted or compromised? Maybe you felt unsafe, like you have lost something. How are you reclaiming those for yourself? I would love to hear the things that you've been doing. It's hard work. I find this is something I haven't really explored, but I see a connection that I'm concerned about. And that one of the connections is that I think a lot of abuse survivors end up struggling with significant anxiety, just really significant, um, to the point that they maybe even are developing agoraphobia, where they're having a hard time going to new places, that they stick to their own community. Maybe they even stick to their own house, that they stick to their routines because they just feel like that once they got out of that relationship and their eyes were open, they suddenly felt like the whole world was dangerous, that they didn't feel safe anymore. And so as a result, they just avoid things that make them feel super uncomfortable. So they don't just keep their world really really narrow, and I feel that risk. I mean, especially right after COVID, the pandemic, I had a hard time getting out. I gotten used to just staying home, and it was safer. I had a very predictable life, so I understand that that temptation not to have a very large life, to let our life be very small, certainly creates gives us more control. It certainly gives us a sense of greater control and can create a sense of safety. But it's also really isolating and less than ideal because that means we miss out on a lot of opportunities. So I have been making efforts lately to get out and do more, see more people, expand my world in the midst of the reality that I know that there are dangerous people and dangerous situations. So it's kind of this balancing act that I have to go out wiser. I have to go out with my eyes open and knowing that I'm meeting potentially, not healthy, dysfunctional people, but also that how to operate in a sense of my own confidence. So that's the tricky part because one of the things that I was reminded of today or this week, and I want to do a shout out to Sandra L. Brown of the Institute of Relational Harm Reduction. Thank you so much for her great work. If you guys aren't following her on Facebook, I highly recommend it. She always has amazing content. She does a lot of research in this area. But one of the comments she made on a video of mine was that I needed to continue to remember that victims, 67% of victims, have hardwired personality traits that increases their exposure to abuse. These traits in themselves are fantastic. They're the things that make us amazing people, easy to be around, positive people, likable, somebody that you'd want on their team. But unfortunately, that also makes them come to the attention of predatory people because it's the opposite. The predatory people see this good quality, this intrinsic kindness and reciprocal opportun I'm sorry, I can't say that word today. Optimistic, there it is, optimistic perspective. They see that and they see that goodness and they see it as gullibility. And in fact, you'll see that happen. That people will comment on videos about victims' experiences and saying you should have known better, you must have been in denial, you missed the signs, you weren't watching out for yourself. So there's a lot of common misunderstandings that we have about victims, that somehow all of us should be completely appropriately sophisticated and have this way of approaching the world that's savvy, smart, that's suspicious enough, paranoid enough. But the reality is that some of us don't see the world that way, that we're hardwired with being agreeable people, hardwired being open and receptive and really believing in the goodness of the world, and that we're hardwired to be moral people. And it's interesting because predatory people who are in the opposite, those they tend to have qualities that are antagonistic, highly conflictual, needs excessive control. They're also people who tend to think that the ends justify the means, that as long as they get what they need out of whatever it is that they're going into, that they view that morals are relative and that it's, as long as they come out on top, then everything's okay. They see that opposite personality, and they know that that's a very vulnerable personality because they know that they can lean into those qualities, those really beautiful qualities, and exploit them. It's interesting how the world would like to say that it's the victim's fault for that vulnerability, that if victims were less open, more guarded, if victims were less trusting, more suspicious, more paranoid, then they wouldn't have gotten into that position in the first place. But is that really a world that you want to live in? Think about what you're asking. You're not putting, the public doesn't put the burden on abusers for stop abusing. It puts the burdens on victims to stop being open and vulnerable to abuse. I think it's backwards. I think it's very backwards. I think that we should be putting the burden on abusers, making this a safer place, not making people safer in a dangerous place. I think that we tend to kind of focus on that direction. And to me, that's just, it makes no sense. So before, I'm going to keep this short today because I don't have any people here. So I've been talking to myself and that's really awkward, but hopefully people will watch this and it's helpful. But I said, what is narcissistic abuse? So let's define narcissistic abuse so that you're clear on it. And let's talk about how it differs from emotional abuse or psychological abuse or even domestic abuse or like domestic violence. So you kind of see this big umbrella of abuse, which is anything that diminishes a person's value and respect, puts them into a box and sees them more as an object, something that's an asset that's exploitable, or at least is um, that they don't have the same kind of space, emotional value as you place on yourself. So anytime that we squeeze people into a corner and diminish and invalidate their experience, or um, we do something that makes them less than human, that's a form of abuse. But how does emotional abuse differ from narcissistic abuse? Well, narcissistic abuse is a subtype of narcissistic. Yeah, let me say that again. Narcissistic abuse is a subtype of emotional abuse. So, emotional abuse, in my opinion, or psychological abuse, I think those words are interchangeable, is anything that affects us, our sense of ourselves, that makes us feel um, less than, that we don't feel like we can fully be ourselves, that we can show up, that we're not comfortable in our skin, that we have to be careful about our safety. So anything that diminishes that our freedom in that realm, in my opinion, is psychological abuse. It can include things like invalidating, minimizing, excessive criticism that's not helpful, deflecting, blaming, attacking, passive aggressive jabs, sarcasm, anything that diminishes in a way that says that this person isn't worthy of our respect, isn't human. To me, that's psychological abuse. Then let's take a look at narcissistic abuse and how that differ from emotional or psychological abuse. So narcissistic abuse is when we have a relationship with somebody that's deceptive, that we don't fully disclose our intent about what we're looking for in this relationship. We hold parts of it back, so we mislead. Think of the bait and switch. How many times have you gone into maybe a sales and you think that you're buying a certain object, maybe it's a car with certain features, but then you get to the end of the sale, or when you're getting ready to drive the car around away, you find out that instead of maybe an automatic, it's a manual transmission. Or maybe instead of having Bluetooth, you find out that it just has the capacity for you to hook up your phone and get Bluetooth in some other way. In other words, that there isn't authentic communication of what this relationship is really about. So you think it's one, they lead you to think that it's one thing, but actually it's really for something else. Now that can happen in a lot of subtle ways. Like it could be that this happens a lot on dating apps. There's a lot of people out there that says, I want a relationship. No, they're actually looking for something that's casual. They're looking for a hookup. They're not really looking for a relationship. So they're thinking that if they can, you're more likely to be interested if they say that what you want to hear, because more people are looking for a relationship than probably people who are just, especially women, who are just looking for a hookup. So it's easy to misadvertise what you're really wanting in order for you to have greater, maybe greater access to this person. So that's sort of what narcissistic abuse is. What makes it even more dangerous is that it's not only that the victim is being misled, but the public is being misled too. this person also presents a face to the public saying, this is what I want, this is what I'm into it for. In other words, they curate a really good image, a good reputation, so that the person who's being abused, once they find out that what they're in, the relationship they're in, isn't exactly what they were being sold. So when they start to complain, they don't get support because it's invisible to the public. So everybody is in on the deception, not just the victim, but the public's in on the deception too. So let me give you an example how it looked for me. I was widowed and looking for a new relationship. I thought I met somebody who was looking for a marriage, a lasting marriage. Now I knew this guy had had a history of broken relationships, but he told me he really wanted to do it differently, that he was invested, that he'd been doing some self help so that he wouldn't make the same mistakes that he had made in the past. That's what he told me. That's what he told others when he talked about what he was looking for in the relationship. What I discovered was that this was a person who was serial dating, serial cheating in the entire time that we were engaged and dating, and even when, and especially when we were married, that he didn't intend to be monogamous and he didn't intend to be exclusive to the relationship with me. But here's the other caveat. He didn't want me to have the same opportunities for an open relationship. He was looking for me to have an exclusive relationship with him, but he didn't plan to be exclusive to me. So there was very much this presentation of one thing when the actuality was something completely different. And that can happen for a lot of victims. It could be that you are told that this person is going to be has had has a certain these are the story. Okay, let me back up. Here's some stories that I've heard. I've heard victims being told that the person they're in a relationship has a career that they don't actually have. Somebody just recently told me that they know of someone whose partner said that they were a doctor, and they even helped put them through what they thought was medical school. Come to find out, this person didn't go to medical school, that they were just a medical assistant. I don't know what happened to the money, but this partner was completely misled into believing that they had met and was in a relationship with somebody with a medical career as a physician, and that wasn't who they were in a relationship with at all. I've also heard, here's another really horrible one. I heard of a story where a partner got into a relationship with somebody that they believed had a terminal condition. This person was going to the doctor and the hospital a lot for treatment, and that they were battling a form of cancer. It was all false. There was no cancer. That person was being lied to. The victim was being lied to and deceived about this person's history. I had once had a client who came in and they told me what their parents did for a job, and how their father was really this somebody in the community. And then I discovered later, as I got to know this person, that that was all a lie. That family, that father wasn't doing what the family said. He had he was in that general occupation of field, in that setting, but that wasn't what he did for a living. How else can it show up? It could be that they tell you that they came from a certain background, that they know certain people. I'm thinking, for example, of the Inventing Anna that we saw on Netflix, how she presented herself as this heiress who had access to wealthy people, and then you find out, no, that's not true about her at all. She'd been lying to you. So it can show up in lots of different ways and lots of subtle ways, and it doesn't these are dramatic examples that I'm giving. It doesn't need to even be that dramatic. It could be simply that this person said to you that they're highly invested in you. Let's say, for example, that you want a traditional relationship, that you meet somebody who says, you know what, I want you to stay at home and raise the kids, and I'm going to go and get a good job and support the two of us, support our family. And then you get into the relationship and you find out, no, they don't intend that at all. In fact, they're shocked that you say that and wonder where you got that. Or maybe they're claiming that they want to have this relationship that's really open and talkative, and they're going to be connecting and everything. And then you get in and you find out that no, they don't intend to be close to you at all. They don't want to be friends with you. In fact, they just wanted they wanted a lifestyle, and that you offered the access to that lifestyle, so that's what they really were pursuing. So the point is, it's a bait and switch. And one of the things that victims feel when they get to the end of it is they feel conned. They feel like they've been duped, like they were scammed, that this whole thing was a massive deception. That when people don't present themselves honestly and indicate what they're truly looking for, and then see whether or not we actually want a relationship based on those conditions, then we set people up for being abused. This is a form of abuse. We need to just come in and present ourselves authentically. Okay, so why would anyone do this? What's the motivation? Well, I can think of some. Sometimes people really have a need to have some type of a reputation. I'm thinking of the people who fake careers. They see the status of some careers and they want the the influence that comes with that status, so they pretend, and then they want you to cooperate in that. It same can go for making up a false history, like where you went to school or what community that you grew up in, or maybe that you grew up with money and that you didn't. So I think sometimes it's about what believing that you won't be accepted as you are. So you create a false narrative as a way to get your foot in the door in places that you don't think that you can. I think other times it's that you think you can't have a relationship under the conditions that you want. That if you were to be upfront and say, "Hey, I want an open relationship, but only on my end, not on your end," I don't think there'd be many takers for that. I think you'd have a hard time finding maybe people that you're looking for to have a relationship like that. I also think sometimes that it's people aren't honest with themselves. They don't always know what they're really looking for. They think they sort of idealize who they think they are and present themselves that way, and they don't really face the fact that's not who they actually are. They're not capable of that. And so then they don't show up in a real way. They show up as who they are. They kind of like I once there's a research out there. They had people rate themselves on a grading scale of A to like A for success all the way to F for failure. And they like students and they said, how well do you think you did in this class? And everybody accordingly is a B average student or an A student. Now, the truth of the matter is, no, not everybody is an A or B student. We're going to have our fair share of C's, D's, and failures. But it's interesting how everybody estimates themselves in better than they are. So same with that. Sometimes I think we do that in relationships. We go into a relationship and we think, yeah, I'm going to show up this way. I really want that. And then when we have to put in the work, we don't know how, we're not that motivated, and we fail at that. So I think it kind of varies for that. But unfortunately, there's a major reason why these types of abuses happen, and that is because there are toxic people. There are people who are dysfunctional, not well put together. They don't have good ego strengths. They're not very reflective. They can't cope with painful emotional experiences like shame. They don't really know what to do with when they feel embarrassed or remorse, or they don't like feeling guilty. They feel defensive, and as a result then they mispresent themselves because they can't truly face themselves. So they come into these relationships create with an idealized picture of who they want to be, who they wish you'd believe that they are. But the truth of the matter is, if they were to truly see themselves as they are, that's not who they are. And yet being able to, I know that sentence made absolutely no sense. If I was to transcribe it, I would have to do a lot of a lot of correction with it. But so sometimes people just they 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 can't face their shortcomings. They can't face how deeply flawed they are. And as a result of that, then they misrepresent who they are going to be in this relationship. And they create a persona that they then convince you that they plan to be, and that's not the truth of who they actually are. And they like this because it gives them control. If you were really about protecting a vulnerability, if you knew you had a severe shortcoming that you thought was a deal breaker, I mean, like a massive deal breaker, and you weren't a person of integrity, then you would go to some pretty sophisticated steps to hide that about yourself. And that's what toxic people do. They hide these pieces of themselves that make them that if we knew that, we'd like, what, you can never take accountability or responsibility. I don't really want a relationship with somebody like that. Or what, you don't really know how to share your feelings and show up for me when I'm having a bad day. I don't really want a relationship with somebody like that. They don't know how to say honestly, yeah, I'm not good at empathy. And I'm not very good at honesty. And you know what? If you have a problem with me, I'm going to probably make you the problem for having the problem, because I don't like dealing with problems that have to do with me. I'm not going to do that. Instead, they just sort of opt out. Have you guys seen I know two of you are now here. Have you guys seen the TV show? It's I think it's an FX show, or maybe it's Fox. I think it's FX, called The Bear. It just finished season 2 a few months ago. In season 2, episode 6, we're introduced. It's a flashback, which I usually hate flashbacks, but this is like if you guys have ever survived abuse, please hold on, because it's a triggering episode, like massively triggering episode. Jamie Lee Curtis plays the mom, Donna, does an amazing job. I mean, like dead on, amazing job of a highly toxic person. But by the end of that show, I had a headache. It was so well done, of the growing tension, the toxic relationships, the lack of honesty, even the subtext. Like Donna's preparing this Christmas meal. I think it's called the Six Fishes or something like that. It's a tradition that I'm not really exactly clear on, but it was a tradition in this family, and they're making these fishes, and she's attempting to do this big spread all by herself, but highly resentful, like furious that it's falling on her. She's older, she's chain smoking, that the kitchen's a mess. It's just a disaster. Meanwhile, she's emasculating and just being highly contemptuous and patronizing of anybody who attempts to come out into the kitchen to help her. Makes it super dangerous, super dangerous. And of course, the whole situation by the end of the 27 minutes or 23-minute episode collapses. It just in the most horrific way. So if you guys ever get a chance to watch season 2, episode 6, I would love to know what you think of it, and what your but it's a perfect example of a toxic person. In fact, later on, she's been invited to come to something that's to celebrate her son's accomplishment. And she does, I'm kind of ruining this for you, sorry, but it's not a big piece of the show, so it's not like I'm really a spoiler, but she doesn't, because she says that by her presence will ruin it, and she doesn't want to ruin the experience, that's what toxic people do. They feel like they give us a version of themselves, and that we don't really actually see who they really are. Hey, Stealth Warrior, yeah, watch it and let me know what you think of it. It's really actually about a restaurant. It's about a younger sibling taking over his older brother's restaurant, and inheriting his restaurant crew. And this younger brother, by the way, has made a name for himself. He's become a world-renowned chef. So he's actually worked at a Michelin restaurant, and he wants to elevate this Chicago sub shop, basically is what it is, sub shop, into something that it's a something. Meanwhile, he's dealing with the fact that his older brother, the reason he's got the restaurant is because his older brother has committed suicide. And so you got all that layering of what happened, what does it mean, what's going on with the family, what's going on with the relationships. Season 1 is just more about and the brother who committed suicide's best friend is clearly a narcissist. I mean, yeah. So he's inherited this ragtag people of personalities that are extremely difficult. Plus, he's a trauma survivor, because when you meet his mom, you find out, oh man, it wasn't just his brother who was a character, his mom's a character too. So so hang on, South Warrior. If you're going to watch it, hang on, because it's quite an experience, but it's very, very well done. And the relationships in it are spot on. The writing is spot on for what toxic relationships look like and how it works out. I think at the end of season 2, there's some ways in which they wrap up a few things that are a little unrealistic. I mean, after all, it's TV, right? And we like things to have happier endings, but it doesn't offer us a perfect ending to season 2. I thought that part was realistic. So yeah, give it a watch and let me know what you think. And you also said, yeah, you felt conned by the lies, because if they knew that they'd been honest with you, you would never have chosen them. That's exactly how I feel. That's exactly how I felt about that relationship. If I had known that when my ex was asking me to go exclusive with him, that he was seeing 7 other people, I would have laughed at him. I thought in fact, now I'm really, I've been on dating apps lately and meeting people, and it's really interesting. He wouldn't even gotten past I wouldn't have gotten past his profile these days. He had enough red flags in it that these days, when anybody puts anything remotely like that in a profile, like, no, thank you. I'm not interested. Things like, I'm looking for these are my non-negotiables in a profile. Really? To me, that I just don't see that as a place to say that. That's stuff that you need to work out, or that you can edit when you meet people. You don't make people edit. See that control piece? It's not the person reading the profile's job to edit themselves for you. You're already putting them in a box. So when I see anybody who says like, I want no drama or anything like that, I like, or no game playing, like, you know what, dude, or because I'm looking at dudes, like, you know what, dudes, that's your job to take care of. And if you can't, you don't know how to do that, really don't want to do it for you, I'm not going to be in a relationship with you. So, hey, thank you for this. I would love here's what I'm thinking. I'm in kind of a crisis with my YouTube channel. I'm sort of trying to figure out where to go with it. I ended that toxic love series. So any of you who've made it this far and watched this, I would really love to have you put in some comments for me what you would love to do. Because here's one of my thoughts. I have a thought, and I'd like to see what you think. I wonder if any of you who watch would be interested in going live with me. Sort of make it like a radio talk show, only with real people. So if you find that interesting, I mean, we could even do it where you could put in a false name and you don't have to have your camera on. You just have to have your mic on so we can hear you. But if that's something that you'd be interested in, like, so I'm thinking about maybe allowing people 5 to 10 minutes to tell their story or present a problem, and then we do some dialogue in front of for the public. We do a live stream where we do dialogue around that issue. So let me know if you think that would be something that's interesting, or maybe there's something else that you wish that I would do or that I haven't done or you'd like to see me do more of. But I feel like I'm struggling to find my niche that really resonates with what you're needing here on this channel. So when you come to my channel, what is it you wish that I was doing or educating about? What kind of content do you find super helpful that you would like to see me do more around? That would be, yeah, I would love to know that. I'm right now feeling like I'm kind of feeling a little lost on all of this and would love to have some feedback about this. So if you have some suggestions, please let me know. Because that's one thought. I thought we could do like a radio call in only with video. You know, you join me. I actually have an ability to where we could have you join where you wait in a waiting room and I bring you in. That's one thing that we could do. I also would be open to interviewing people. It's a little harder to pull that off and might have to do it less frequently, but maybe something once a month or once every other month, I could interview somebody that's an expert in this field. I love interviewing. I know how to do that. That's something I'm super comfortable doing. It could be that I could analyze or talk about a book that I'm reading and the things that I'm learning. It's more work on my end. I'm not for sure how interesting it would be unless we're doing a book club, and I'm not for sure that would work. Another thought is to have people write me letters and I could read the letters and then talk about it online. Or maybe there's something like a series, like you're wondering if I would like take the subtypes of narcissism and break them down one at a time and introduce what they are, or maybe types of manipulation and introduce that. You can tell I'm very logical. So I always tend to think about how to dissect things into its parts. So, but I'd be open to doing that. But yeah, or maybe you're really wanting like skill building, like tips on how to handle triggers or how to handle anxiety, or maybe more meditation and breath work. What I've noticed though is that content doesn't tend to do well. People are not that interested. Things that do well tend to be more curiosity driven, more kind of scary or intense. Not that I'm opposed to doing that, but it's kind of I don't want to always just be about the clickbait. So it'd be nice to have something that's a little more solid. But you all who are watching this, you're my subscribers, you're my community. And I want to make sure that what I put out for longer content really hits the spot for you, that's something that you're looking for. So let me know. I would love to hear back some of your thoughts. That would be awesome. Or maybe you have some idea that I haven't thought of. That would be really great. And if you haven't, be sure to check out my podcast channel. It now has its own page. That's where all the podcasts have moved. It's called Breaking Free from Narc Abuse. So I'd love to see you over there. And thanks so much for today. It was great hanging out with you guys. And Stealth Warrior, I really appreciate your comment. I always appreciate all my regulars. You guys are really special to me. So you guys have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.